Wow, what a room! You guys, this is great. I've got my clock. I am setting the time. Okay, it's 1 o'clock, so that means I've got 20 minutes, right? Or maybe I'll even go a little under, just for kicks. All right, my first note to myself is breathe, so here we go. I want to start by thanking the organizers, all the women who helped put this amazing day together. A special thanks to Betty for reaching out to me and asking me to be here. She's incredible too. Also a really big deal. It's hard to be brave. To be brave, you have to do things that frighten you, to do things that you fear. Now, I know a thing or two about fear because I was born and raised in Salem, Massachusetts. For those of you who have not been there, Salem, Massachusetts is a wonderful place where a bunch of women were hanged, and one man was pressed, and men were, I should say, both women and men, but mostly women were hanged for being witches. It's kind of like 365 days a year, it's Halloween. And that's where I was raised. So when people ask me, you seem like such a nice young lady. Why do you write such dark and twisted things? I say, I'm from Salem, and they're like, okay. Then they start to understand why. So, for example, when I was in high school, all of my friends, we worked at these things, we called them the tourist traps in Salem. I worked at a place called the Salem Witch Dungeon, which was basically a museum of torture devices that they used on witches. And after a reenactment of one of the trials, they would send people down to the basement. We didn't have rats, man, don't worry, but it was my job to dress in rags and a rubber mask and jump out of the darkness and scare people. It was the best job I've ever had, really. It really was the best job. And sometimes I say to myself, it's sort of like that's still my job, except now I do it on paper. Salem is also right on the water. It was an important shipping port, and I grew up going to the ocean, swimming in the ocean, spending a lot of time there. And I got it in my mind that what I wanted to be when I grew up, I wanted to be a female Jacques Cousteau. I just thought he was the coolest. So I had this dream of being out on the water and talking to whales and having adventures. So I decided to major in biology when I went to school. But then I learned very quickly that I wasn't very good at science as much as I had a lot of enthusiasm for it. And one day I signed up for a writing class. It was the first time I'd ever read writers who were still alive. I didn't even know writers could be alive. It changed everything for me. And so I decided, what I could do? I could take the things that I love, all the stuff about science, and I could take this, other thing that I love, which is reading and writing, and try to put them together, which I did in my first book called Animal Crackers. Along the way, Animal Crackers is a short story collection, and along the way, what I did was I started a literary magazine, which Betty mentioned, called One Story. It looks like this. It's kind of a short story of the month club. We're a nonprofit. We've been doing it for 15 years, and it's been a real labor of love. When we launched the magazine, we decided that we would never publish an author more than once. So right now we're working on issue 240, and we've published 240 different writers from around the world. Including Min Jin Lee. So I'm bringing this up because these are my bribes for people who ask questions. If you ask a question, I've got copies of the magazine, and I will give one to you if you come and find me in the author signing room later. So, bribes. And now you have 10 minutes to think of a good question. But first I want to take you on a journey, the journey of this book, and how I wrote it and what it was like. So it starts with a failure. And I think most good projects start with some kind of failure. So I was trying to write a book. I was working very hard. I was putting in my hours, but it really didn't have any life to it. I think that I was writing just because I felt I should be writing, and I felt a lot of pressure about it. This was, I had published The Good Thief, which did very well, and then everyone was asking me, what's next? What are you going to do now? And I had no idea. So I was just sort of writing into the darkness. There was a couple other things that were happening in my life at the time which were difficult. I was completely broke, and so I was struggling to pay my rent each month and make my way through the world. And also, I'd gone through a very bad breakup, so I'd fallen in love. Oh, gosh, the kind of love where you want to be that person? You just want to be them. It was like that. And so I was very distressed and heartbroken at the time. And then also, several family members of mine were all diagnosed with cancer in the same 2 weeks. So I was spending most of my days trying to help them through their treatment and operations. All my days were ironing out all of the health insurance, spending time in hospitals, and worrying about losing the people that I loved most in the world. I decided that I needed to do something. I needed to try to find a way to write again or find space to. So I decided I would go back to a place that I'd been to before, which had really changed things for me as a writer, Whidbey Island, which some of you might know about. It's off the coast of Seattle. It's a fabulous place. If you haven't been there, please go. There is some sort of magic in the land there, I think. So, yeah, I think part of it is that you have to take a boat to get there. Well, you can take a bridge, but there's something about when you get on a boat and you're on your way to an island that feels like you're leaving all your problems behind. And I was really longing for that moment. So I rented a cabin. I got myself a plane ticket. I rented a car. I put it all on credit cards. I picked up my rental car. I drove 2 blocks. And as I was driving through an intersection, a woman ran a red light and smashed into the car and totaled it, and totaled me. So I was lucky, that I didn't break any bones, but I had some injuries. And as the police were sort of using the jaws of life to pry me out, and I sort of stumbled to the sidewalk and sat down and was brushing the broken glass from my hair, I had 2 thoughts. One of them was, what's next, God? You ever have those moments where you feel like sort of all the areas of your life are starting to cave in around you? The second thought I had was, oh God, I didn't take the insurance. So here's another, $15,000 or whatever, I'm going to be in the hole. And, but then I had a third thought, and it was this: I'm still here. I'm still alive. So I got up from that sidewalk, took my suitcase, my Rolly suitcase, I limped the 2 blocks back to the rental car place. I walked in the door and they were like, didn't you just leave? I was like, surprise, you don't have a car anymore. Anyway, but you know what? They gave me another car. They gave me a second chance. They trusted me to leave there again and not get in another car crash. So I drove through that intersection for the second time. No one hit me. It was great. I stopped at a liquor store. And then I got on that boat and I went to that cabin. The first thing I did after pouring myself a drink was I threw the 200 pages of the failed novel that I've been trying to write out the window. And the book that I started writing was this. I decided I wanted to write a book about things that I cared about and about places that I knew. And so I'd recently been to something called the Greasy Pole contest. And the Greasy Pole, has anyone been to the Greasy Pole? I should ask that first. Okay, so the Greasy Pole is a contest that happens each year in Gloucester, Massachusetts. And it's a place where I lived for a brief period of time, which is a fishing village. It's mostly known for it's a place of the perfect storm. Maybe you've seen the movie with George Clooney. Not a great movie, but wonderful book. And so what these fishermen do each year to start the season is they take a 45-foot-long telephone pole, they put it on the edge of a pier, they cover it with grease and lard, and they nail a flag to the end. It's set out over the water. And then all of the fishermen get really, really drunk, and they spend all day trying to reach that flag. The entire town comes out. There's like a flotilla, of all the boats that tie themselves together. Everybody comes out on the beach. Everyone has boat horns, which they blast in joy and dismay as each man slips and falls off of the pole into the water. And they also they bust out their teeth, they break, it's joyous, but it's also brutal. It's sort of like watching America's Funniest Home Videos over and over and over again, but really fun. So I was like, I like the Greasy Pole. I know Gloucester, I'm just gonna write a scene about that. So I started to describe one of these men. They sort of strip down when they get on this pole, which is another reason why I enjoy this thing. So I described this man stripping off his shirt, and I put on my writer's binoculars and zoomed in really close. And I realized that he had scars on his body. It made me think about scars. The scars we carry have stories. Sometimes those stories are really lovely, like this is the scar I got when my father was teaching me how to ride a bike. Sometimes the scars are, this is the scar from my mastectomy. And they're the stories that we only tell to the people that we're the most intimate with, our doctors or our lovers. And I thought, what if I could try to tell a man's entire life story and only tell the story of the scars? So once I looked a little bit closer and realized that these scars were actually bullet holes that had been healed over, I thought, what kind of guy has been shot 12 different times? He's got to be some kind of criminal. So he's already a tough guy. What the hell is he doing up on this greasy pole? He doesn't have to prove anything. So I looked into the crowd for a reason for why he was there. And I found a young girl watching her father win the greasy pole. And her name was Lou. And I realized this was going to be a whole story about this father and daughter, him sort of trying to hide this dark past, and her being the detective trying to find it out. So one of the things that I love about the hardback of the book is the cover actually tells the story of the book. So the outside is Samuel Hawley, which, as you can see, it has bullet holes in it, all the different times he was shot, and underneath has a beautiful star map, and that represents his daughter Lou, who sort of finds her way by looking up at the stars. So I wanted to ask the question, could a bad man be a good father? And also, how do we keep living when life keeps trying to kill us, right? How do we keep moving forward? So I decided as I was exploring the novel, I realized that his story really had a lot to do, a lot of similarities with the 12 Labors of Hercules, who was another sort of dark hero. When you say the word Hercules, you think about this very powerful guy, you think about the Disney movie, but the true story of Hercules is that the reason why he had to go on those 12 labors is because he had, in a fit of madness, murdered his own wife and children. So here was this great guy doing these amazing things, but he was doing them for dark reasons, to try to cleanse his soul. And Samuel Hawley is on a similar journey. And the second part of this story, which was really about Lou, made me think about how when we're kids, our parents are our heroes. They make all the decisions. We don't really think about them ever having a life that had something to do not with us, right? We don't think about them having lives before we were born, but if we're lucky and we grow old enough and they grow old enough and they stay alive for us to get to know them a little bit better, we start to see them as real human beings with all the positives and the negatives that comes with. And I don't know if you've ever had one of those moments where you found out something about your parents' past and you say, oh, that's why they do that, right? That's why they're that way. So I wanted Lou to have a similar journey. She's slowly uncovering bit by bit all these secrets of her father. I'm going to tell a very quick story that brings me back to my Jacques Cousteau days, I should say. As I was working on the book, I was writing one day, and I was writing one of Samuel's past chapters, his bullet chapters, as I call them, and a whale showed up in the book. Obviously, I mean, I've always had this secret love for whales, and this whale just sort of rose from the surface. And my first reaction was, take that whale out. Who the hell do you think you are? You're not a good enough writer to have a whale in your book. And that's what I did. I immediately took it out. But all right, and then I had to talk myself through it. I had to say, okay, all right, well, no one's ever going to see this. No one's ever going to read this book. So let's pretend if you kept the whale in the book, how would you make it work? Try to approach it that way. So I did, and the whale ended up becoming a really important part of the story. So for anyone who buys the book, I actually made this whale stamp that I stamp into the book, and a few of you who have already bought the book, you've seen the stamp. And that's what it's about. It's about when you think that you are not good enough for something, try it anyway. Try it anyway. Try to step through some of that fear and get to the other side. So something I want to talk about also about fear and how to deal with it. Number one, I think a great place to start is to name your fears. Actually name them. I'm afraid of losing my family. I'm afraid that I'm never going to fall in love again. The second thing is to declare sanctuary. Find a safe place for yourself, a group of friends, or maybe a room in your house, maybe a corner, maybe a library. Your fears will still find you, but at least you can face them on sacred ground. The third thing is from a quote from Zora Neale Hurston, which I love, which is, grab the broom of anger and drive off the beast of fear. When we're afraid, a lot of times we sort of fold into ourselves and we try to protect ourselves. We hide ourselves away from the world. We turn on Netflix instead of watching the news. But anger is a different emotion. Anger is full of energy, and it forces you to take action. So trying to move this place of fear to a place of anger and feelings of injustice and feeling like, you know what? Screw you, I am going to put a whale in my book. It's a better place to be. The fourth is to remember, like I was in Salem, put on a mask. If you're too afraid, put on a mask and pretend you're someone else for a little while. If you do this enough times, one day you sort of forget and you leave your mask at home. And number 5 is to release your demons. Find some way to do an exorcism that gets that fear out of being inside you and out into the world. So one of the questions that's come up already in a number of these talks is, how do we keep on living? How do we make our way through fear? And I think the answer is always love. So will you help me do something? I'm going to face a fear right now, hopefully with all of you. I'm going to do something really scary. And I need your help. What I need you to do is to snap. Can you do this? Follow my snap. That's it. The 12 Lives of Samuel Hawley is a book about love, so I'm going to sing about love. I can't believe I'm going to do this. I am very afraid. Breathe. My love is a mountainside. So firm it can calm the tide. My love is just like a mountainside. Stands so firm it can calm the tide. That's why my love is a mountainside. My love is an ocean's roar. So strong that I can't let you go. My love is just like an ocean's roar. Grows so strong that I can't let you go. That's why my love is an ocean's roar. My love is longer than forever, and endless is the march of time, till 99 years after never. In my heart you'll still be mine, because my love is a deep blue sea. So deep that I'll never be free. My love is just like a deep blue sea, grows so strong that I'll never be free. That's why my love is a deep blue sea. Thank you.